Okay, this is my first video that I've ever done for 3D modeling. Hope you enjoy. So when you first load the model, it's kind of small, so you have to resize it, and so you just go to the resize tool here. This is the model that is the end piece, so you kind of got to get it the same size as the dragon that you're going to be putting in there. So you load the dragon, the dice tower dragon. And there he is. So now we're going to be resizing the dice tray so that it fits the dragon. Before we do that, I always recommend repairing the models. There we go. So I'm going to find the dice tray and resize it so we can sit in it and poop out some dice for us. Got to get the dice tray rotated here. Then we're going to put it in position near where the dice come out. Something I always do is cut the bottom off so that it'll sit flush with the print bed and print better, and won't have a section raised up from the ground. So between splitting the model and cutting a bit of it off the bottom and settling it back onto the ground or onto the main plate there, you can trim the bottom off so that you can get a flush surface with the print bed. So let's just raise it a bit up and cut it here. Do the same with the dragon. We don't want to cut too much of the model off, but just enough to kind of make a flat surface. Here I'm doing just 0.1 of a millimeter, but you might find better results with a higher number. We have to get this dice tray the proper size, so I'm just widening the sides to give the dragon a little bit of room on either side. So we'll move the right side here a little bit, the left side. See how that looks? Looks like we got enough room on either side. So now we need to raise the dragon up just enough so that he'll poop the dice out in a good roll, and they won't get caught up in the exit there. So you just need to, what we're going to be doing is a subtract, and something I like to do when we subtract it is change the color so that we can see the leftover part and what we actually subtracted from the leftover part. First we got to make sure we get this dragon looking right. We're going to color it green here. It's a good contrast color. As you can see when I subtract it, you get quite a nice contrast. It's a little bit low, so we'll have to raise the dragon. Try again, raise the dragon. See how the green where it's touching the model it's subtracted from? That's all the parts it touched. So Probably gonna have to raise it a little bit here. So I just undid my subtract. Selecting the dragon here and raising it up a little bit just so that it looks right. Doing another subtract is basically just a trial and error until you get it right the way you like it. You gotta make sure it's printable when it's done too. That's another key thing. And right here it looks like all the pieces are printable, and it looks like it's subtracted just nicely. So now, one of the parts that I didn't like about this dice tray was the textured dice tray part where you actually roll the dice, because everyone knows that when you roll a dice you need it to have a good steady surface. Just making sure this dice tray is, or the dragon subtraction is looking good here. So we need to make a, before we go on to the dice tray, the flat dice tray part, we need to make a little edge or a ledge for the dinosaur or the dragon to rest his feet on, so it doesn't look like they're dangling. You know, actually, then rather than importing a new model, we're just going to copy this model and paste it, and then we're going to rotate it and cut it to the level where their feet is, and we've already got a hint of where his feet are going to be, and it's going to be right where that green part is. So we just need to cut the model down to about where the green part begins. So barely cut the green part off, and you'll see that once the green part disappears. And so with Windows 3D Builder you can be really precise on where you're making this cut. And you can get in there and adjust the millimeters to the fractions of millimeters. It's pretty neat. So let's try, I think the number's probably going to be 8 total. Let's try something a little lower than 8 first, and then we'll see if we can, if 8's what we need. That looks good. There's a little piece up in that top corner that's going to be left over. We don't want that. Yeah, 7.8's too low. 7.9 is good, but it's not good enough for that little piece in the corner, so 8 I think is the best number here. 8 looks good. Let's go ahead and split the model. We're going to drag it over to the main dice tray to give it just a ledge. Splitting it, so it's going to be about this big, but we don't really know how big it's going to be yet, so let's undo this and just move it over. With the dice tray, or with this ledge of the dice tray, you have a few options. You can make it bigger or smaller, make it look like steps, and that just is how big or how wide it's going to be. It's already got a texture on the right. I played a little around with the texture on the top. Yeah, let's spin it around so it matches the sidewall texture a little bit better. I played around with trying to get the texture of the top like some sort of rock texture, and it just didn't look good, so I bagged that and just made it flat. I'm just getting it the right size here. I don't want it to poke out the other side, so, but we'll get rid of all that when we cut it, the excess model inside the other model off, and then we won't get that problem anymore. You can also import the dragon to see kind of where his feet are going to be. Just kind of see how it looks before you can kind of use him as a reference. You don't have to keep him there because you don't want to print him there, but he's a separate piece that goes in separately. But just to kind of give you an idea of how the ledge would look if it's out far enough or not. Looks like it is, so we'll just get rid of him. We'll bring him back to reference other bits and pieces of it. So now we're going to make the dice tray like I was talking about before. We're going to want it to come out right when the dice come out and fall in a flat part. We don't want it to hit any texture because that might mess up with the dice roll. And we don't want to hit any of the walls here, so let's go just right up next to the wall and on all three sides here. I'm using the color green. It's the default color, but it's a good contrast color that just shows what part of the dice tray that we are subtracting. The way I get a good depth is I'll settle the cube part to the bottom and then raise it up however many millimeters I want the bottom of this tray to be thick. And so I'll settle it here and then we'll raise it up. So now it's flush with the bottom and we'll raise it up 2 millimeters. And so that'll give us, and you can play around with this. You can have this be as deep or shallow as you want, but I wanted it to be pretty deep, so I just made it deeper. Now we're going to add a little bit of flavor to the landing. That's not the right rock. To the landing here so it doesn't look just straight or just flat. So let's add some rocks here. We're going to add a rock and a treasure chest. So we're going to bring the dragon back so that we don't have him have his feet butt up against the rock in any way. Because then he won't sit on the dice tray very well. So here's the dragon dice roller again. See how the rock's a bit kind of in the way there, so we'll use him as a reference, raise him up a bit. Use him as a reference to see where his feet are going to be sitting when you actually put him down. And it looks like it's going to be too big, so we'll just adjust the size of these rocks a little bit so they don't get in the way. Ideally, you could make the whole thing and then just subtract the dragon again, or you can do the subtraction at the end, but subtract the dragon from all the texture that you put down in here. I mean, you can get pretty fancy, so he'll just sit right in wherever you subtract him from. That rock looks good. Let's add the treasure chest. I think I've got to load this up. This chest will come in all on its side and stuff, so we gotta move him out and rotate it. I made the chest kind of small in the original, but I mean, if you make a big enough landing on that side, you could make it as big as you want. Tried to keep it away from the dragon's leg here. Here we'll cut the landing apart and make it wider. Rotate the plane of the cut 90 degrees and slide it over. We'll zoom in here and take a look at where we're actually cutting. Make sure we're not cutting and leaving a gap. There we go. Now we're going to widen this after this, and then we'll have some room for the chest. And we can make the rock bigger too if we want to. Here we go. But yeah, you can play around with this part as much as you want. Add torches, you know, really whatever you want to add to it. Just getting this chest in the right spot. And the right size so that it doesn't bug the dragon's leg when he comes down. And like I said, you could have him, you can put it wherever you want, make it as big as you want, and then just subtract the dragon from the model and it'll cut out the chest. Oh, cut the chest in there. There we go. So there you go. That's pretty much it. It's not too hard. I mean, it's just a lot of mixing, remixing, resizing, subtracting, and getting the dice tray just the way you want it. And I think it turns out really nice. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm glad you stayed around to watch, and enjoy.